Corsair, our non-stimulant, thermogenic, and recomposition agent. Corsair is a super cool product because it's going to help you utilize turning your white adipose tissue, which is for storage of fat, into brown adipose tissue, which is going to help with energy production. So this is great to use for a competition prep or in your weight loss phase. So you can stack it with a stimulant-based thermogenic, or you could also use it in your off-season or muscle building phase to help keep you lean and mean. Corsair.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Pro Physique Code. I don't need to introduce Miss Sandy Williamson, but I'm going to anyway. So Lexie actually attended the NPC workshop in Orlando recently and talked to Sandy, and there's probably nobody that's had more influence in my career coaching females in this sport. And so I wanted to introduce Sandy a little bit just because I think everybody knows you that competes in the sport. They're familiar with your face, but they probably don't know to the extent which you've been around this sport. I mean, you were literally in attendance for the first Miss Olympia competition, correct?
Yeah, not again, obviously not as any kind of, incapacity. My ex-husband took me to see the show, and unbeknownst to us, he was trying to tell me that, doing 100 reps with 10-pound weights was not what I should be doing. And so he did. He took me to see a female bodybuilding show, which I did not want to go see, just by the way. And it just happened to be the first Miss Olympia in Philadelphia by George Snyder.
Well, we have that in common. The first time I went to a bodybuilding show and there was Bikini, I walked out. So life goes full circle.
Absolutely, it does.
And the reason your husband wanted you to lift weights, because if I remember correctly, we've talked about it briefly, but you had some issues with weight. You were as heavy as what, 250 pounds. And then after you graduated nursing school, you got down to like 70 something pounds, right?
Good memory, Paul. Yes. 72 pounds at 5'7".
Wow.
Wow. That's class H. That's how I know heights.
Yeah, well, it was. And the thing is, at that time, they thought that I had leukemia, because anorexia was not in the books yet. It was just,
wow.
Now, Paul, you might remember, Lexie, you're way too young, but Karen Carpenter.
Yeah,
She was the first person that actually brought it, because she died. She died at 27 years old from anorexia because her potassium, dropped too low, and your heart will fibrillate, and that's what happened. And so they were just starting to see that there was this disease entity, in young women.
Yeah, I think, coaching females for as long as I have now, the one thing I notice is that women really start to pay attention to their weight at a much younger age than men, where men typically don't. They want their weight to go up. Women will, as early as probably middle school now, will start restricting calories to fit a certain mold.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I've always loved about you, Sandy, is that at a time when I was considering coaching competitors and I wasn't really sure about the health implications, right? Because for me, it's all about the long-term well-being. The first time I heard you speak was about the power and the benefit of the weight room for women. So give me a little bit of your thoughts on that, because I think that will really help people understand like why you love what you do.
Okay. Sure. Like I said, and when I say that this sport literally saved my life, it did. So like I said, I had lost the weight. And the thing is, I also had kwashiorkor. So if anybody's familiar with that, it's what you see in the African countries, third world countries, a lot with the kids, because they don't have enough nutrition, they don't have enough protein. Basically, they get a disease where their body starts to get filled with fluid, and they get the big belly, the extended bellies, and they have the tiny little limbs. That was me. And so I was already starting to, to spill over with fluid and stuff. My body, your body tries to compensate however it can. Anyways, I was going to a women's, because at that time, again, there was no co-ed anything in most areas when I talked to people throughout the country, but definitely not in, Reading, Pennsylvania. So I started to go to an all-women's spa, and they had me, I'd come home and I'd say to my ex-husband, I'd say, oh my God, I did 100 leg presses with 10-pound weights. And he'd be like, he's a power lifter, but he's also track and field and football player. And he'd be like, why the heck would you be doing that? And I'm going, well, what do you think I should be doing? He'd go, oh, you should be doing 10 to 15, 20, 20 reps with, 50 pounds. And I'm like, oh my God, I will get huge. I don't want to be this huge muscle. I know it is. But to the average female, lots of times that is what you think, because you think, okay, if any book will tell you, if you do less reps and more weight, you're going to gain muscle. they don't tell you that you could do that for 40 years and still not gain the kind of muscle that you think, you're going to gain. And so that's why he did. He took me to the first Miss Olympia. And when I saw those women that were just drop dead gorgeous, and they weren't, you have to remember too, now again, I don't think it's the same now, but back then, the standard for us was you pick up a magazine and you're having models 5'11", 6 foot, and they were like 110, 115 pounds.
Yeah,
And
the supermodels of the 70s were very thin.
yeah, yes. And that, you know what I mean? That was, but that's what young girls my age, that was what you saw in a magazine. So that's what you thought you should be like.
Right.
And yes. And then when I saw these women that had curves and they were gorgeous, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to try whatever they're doing. And that's, that's how it started. But also too, you do know for the health issues, Paul, getting back to you, that first of all, for women, the more muscle we can put on, because again, most women are not going to gain 100 pounds of muscle, but that muscularity is what's going to pick up your metabolism, allow you to eat more, but it's going to serve you down the road. For osteoporosis with women, like I said, I went and had my bone density when I was like 45 with one of the girls that I worked with, who was a dancer, and she was thin and a beautiful girl. And she was already had osteoporosis because she danced all her life, which to me was, she was physically active. And I was still in the norm. And it was because of my weight training.
I've coached a few women that are switching from like ballet or that, and
Mhm.
they restrict calories very heavily.
Yeah.
I think
Well-
the background has a lot to do with it too, because like I can speak in the sense of being a gymnast growing up and then a cheerleader. I was the flyer, and nobody told me I had to be super, super small, but just in those sports like dance, cheer, gymnastics, I feel like you kind of have that thought process of needing to be very small because it'll make you better at your sport.
Oh, yeah, I know. I have a niece. Her daughter's was a gymnast, and part of it is they get, some of the girls will get upset when they start to get to puberty, and their bodies change, and they start to put some weight on because again, in their sport, that's not what they most you see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little neurotic about my sleep. And we all know in order to feel our best, build muscle, lose body fat, sleep is a big part of it. When I started incorporating cured nightcaps as part of my wind down routine, it truly changed the game in terms of having a good night's quality sleep and waking up feeling refreshed. The thing that makes the nightcap stand out isn't the already properly dosed CBD to help with general aches, discomfort, and mood, but it's the added CBN that takes this product to the next level. CBN supports your body's natural sleep rhythms throughout the night for deep restorative sleep that leaves you feeling ready to take on anything the next day. No grogginess or harsh side effects. I like to take these nightcaps with me when I'm traveling or if I'm experiencing higher stress than normal. Pairing the nightcaps with either Zen or a few drops of one of their CBD oils really hits the spot. Making sure to check out all of Cured's amazing products online. Use the code, all one word, for a discount at checkout.
Yeah, well, Simone Biles has got some muscle on her. She could do a bodybuilding show.
But that's what's nice to see. Even like with track and field. You know what I mean? You see a lot more girls now with muscle, and obviously muscle is a lot more, obviously acceptable on, women now, and women know that it's going to that additional muscularity is going to help them with strength in any sport that they're doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So as you evolved into getting into lifting weights, how did you become involved in judging? Because that is a very specific kind of position in the sport. I used to promote shows and I did not like judging. I felt that I was judging someone's work and their talent, and it was very difficult for me, but it's such an essential part of the sport. So where did you evolve into that phase?
Well, I also, as I obviously now that I'm older, I always tell people, like, sometimes you don't know the little choices that you make in life can have huge implications when you look back on it. You know what I mean? And one of them was, Paul, you might remember, Lexie, you will not, Candy Census. When I went to my first show, which happened to be, I mean, it's ironic when I look back at it now, but it was at Soldiers and Sailors in Pittsburgh. It was not the Pittsburgh Championships. I don't even remember what, the name was. But I went by myself because my husband had an industrial accident. And I did not want to go, just by the way. I was not somebody that traveled by myself or, did that kind of stuff. Candy Senses and her husband, who were from my area in the eastern part of Pennsylvania, they were there. And they kind of took me under their wing because they realized I was there by myself. And she was probably one of the first handfuls, again, with Rachel and them, that, became a female pro bodybuilder. And so that was when, Jim had just formed the NPC, which was only men in 1982. And the women's side of the sport was the AFWB, the American Federation of Women's Bodybuilding, which Candy was part of. And so Candy and I kind of stayed in contact since she was from my area. And she said to me one time, probably it was like 83, and she said about starting to judge. And same thing, I remember, my ex-husband was there, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm a nurse 5 days a week. I was trying to get, start a family at the time and stuff. I have no time for that. And my ex-husband was like, but there's all men on the panel. Maybe if you start to do it, you'll get a better idea of what they're looking for. And I was like, okay, I'll do a couple shows, but that's all I'm doing. And that's how it started.
The rest is history.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But then, if you remember with the history, the AFWB combined with the NPC in '84. So I was already judging. So, Jim started using me with the NPC. And then Candy was actually the first female chairperson for the NPC. And then she died at 33 of breast cancer. And then May Malika, who was with Ricky Wayne, which was he's a big, journalist with the the fitness magazines. She was our second women's chairperson. And then they relocated to one of the Caribbean countries, since that's where he was from. And then same thing, Jim called and said to me, would I be willing to go first to the Women's World Championships? Because you could travel on somebody else's airline ticket then. So they had already bought in Mays. And so, I went to Singapore, which I thought was going to be somewhere in the United States. I couldn't imagine I was going to a different country to judge. But same thing, when I came back, he said to me, would you be willing to help with the women? And I mean, the same thing, these are truths. I was like, for a couple months, I can't do this full, I said, I was working full time, 40 hours a weekend, and I was trying to, start a family and stuff.
And you've been working full time. Are you still working? Or are you now?
I actually retired in 18. Yeah, I know. Okay. Most people do not realize that I was a full-time nurse for 44 years.
I learned that because somebody had told me, and I think a lot of people are so surprised, because it's like you're everywhere all the time. You're at every big show. You're always judging, and to think, oh my gosh, you were also doing like a full-time job on top of that. Like, I look at what you do now as being very full-time. So, I mean, how did you manage that? That had to be a lot.
Yeah, well, part of it was unfortunately I could not get, I did not get pregnant and stuff. So, I didn't have, I had family life, but not, raising children and stuff too. And also, if I would never have been able to do this if I wouldn't have been in nursing, because as nursing evolved, it became 3 12-hour shifts for most nurses was a full-time job, and flexibility. By that time I was starting to, accumulate seniority, when I moved to California and stuff. So I had a lot of, I was willing to, at that time, there was very few shows on a holiday weekend. So I volunteered to work all the holidays. And then that gave me the flexibility, you know what I mean? Like and also too, in the beginning, the work week was for us was a 2-week for 80 hours. So I could work 6 12-hour shifts in 1 week and go to the World Championships in the next week. And I wasn't taking vacation, you know what I mean? I wasn't taking vacation and stuff. So it was that flexibility, and I worked night shift. So I could work during the night and then go, I could judge during the day, which, I did a lot.
So over the years, since I've been involved, there was only men's divisions. There was only one men's division for many years. Then they added the women's. Then they started to add a second division for women. Were you around when they introduced the figure division, and how did that conversation go?
That wasn't the first division though, Paul. 1995, it was the fitness. That was our first
fitness thing. Okay.
Yes, because I was in California, and Jim sent Ted and myself to go judge some of Lou Zwick's Muscle Mania, but he was the one that had that was the first organization with fitness, just to get an idea of what they were looking at, what they were judging. And then in 1995, they did the first show, and I don't even remember at the time, if it was, I wasn't nationals because Jim would have been there. So it had to be like the junior nationals. I think that's what it was in Chicago. But Jim and all them had to go to Toronto for a big pro show. So I did that show by myself. I mean, obviously with other judges, but and we had 80 women that showed up for fitness. And
Wow.
yes. And so the way they did it, the way, like I said, they did it at Muscle Mania was what we kept doing is we did body first. So we kept bringing out the girls like in groups of whatever, 10, 20, 30. And we would eliminate to 50, because at back time at all our national shows, we eliminated the top 15 in a class or, weight class, and the rest went home. You didn't even, it was done in like a couple minutes. So that's what we did. We kept getting, and when we got it down to 30, then we did 30 routines. And Adela Garcia, at the time for Mansky, she became that 30 girl because of her, her physique held her in everything. And if I'm not mistaken, Adela and I talk about this all the time, she was 30th place when we got done because she could not do a routine to save her. Yeah. Figure came in 95. That was our first fitness. And figure, God, this is where we do need JM Manny. He's much better with the dates. I want to say 2001, 2002.
Okay.
Fitness, yeah. Then a lot of the girls didn't want to do the routine, but we had women with, really nice bodies, nice muscularity, but not as big as women's bodybuilding because society was changing. You know what I mean? Yeah. The men didn't want to be quite as big. The women didn't want to be quite as big, as our bodybuilders. And our bodybuilders were like anything. Every sport has their extreme. And again, you always, our athletes are going to test like what they can accomplish with their physiques.
Yeah. And I think there's a natural curiosity for some people, just like what are they capable of? What can possibly their bodies do? And especially now that we live in the era where like, even genders are being questioned. I think now more than ever, it should be acceptable. Like if this is what I want to do with my body, then let me do it. And so that's why it's so great. There's so many divisions for people to express their specific kind of desires for how to look. And I still remember Figure had multiple rounds with different suits. It was like a 1-piece round and a 2-piece round, quarter turns in heels. So it was still feminine, and allowed for women to display like, I think Rachel McClish is the name that always pops in my head when I think about that first like female body type that was like, I don't think any man or any woman ever looked at her and went like, yeah, that's not nice. Like that's and I think that's still even now, if you, I don't know what the muscularity would compare to. You've seen it with your eyes. I didn't see it with my eyes, and pictures don't always do it justice, but thinking how the divisions have evolved, I feel like the entry-level division for women, which is now bikini, the muscularity is starting to get, comparable to what women's bodybuilding was in the early days. Would you say that's fair?
And I would say if you would go back and look at photos of like Rachel and stuff, I think they'd be somewhere between, between bikini and figure. Because Rachel, if I try to think of like Lorelai and Jen Doy and because the thing is they probably might have the same amount of muscularity, but it would be the conditioning. Even though obviously the women were not conditioned like we are now, they still were more conditioned than the bikini. Because they were trying to display muscle, and darn well you're going to have to get a little bit, the more muscle you want to display when you're not big to begin with, you're going to have to be a little bit leaner. You know what I mean? But yeah, and I think too, it's like, and I had this conversation with Jake Wood one of the times we did a podcast, an interview together and stuff, and like I always associate our women's bodybuilding, that division, with again everybody. The big thing for mountain climbers are to climb Mount Everest, even though they know every year a certain percentage is going to die because you're testing your limits in your own sport. Like, where can I take my body? What can my body handle? And you know what I mean? So, I don't think it's any difference. But like you said, Paul, what's nice is that we have so many different divisions to appeal to so many women. And I like it because, like I said, I just think weight training and nutrition, that was the other thing. You don't learn nutrition anywhere else but in the sport. And I think that combination of that too just allows so many more women to live a healthier lifestyle. Even though, again, we do get, bad reps and stuff, but when I look at the girls that are in the US, I just saw some statistics that 54% of adults are obese, not, heavy obese. But what's really sad is 28% of our children under 18 are obese. And that is just as detrimental to somebody's health, especially over longevity, than anything else.
Yeah, I always say when someone says bodybuilding is not healthy, I'm like, well, it's healthy for me. It's given me a life that I could never explain to somebody else, and I don't expect everyone to do bodybuilding. But I imagine if you went to that women's seminar in Orlando and polled the audience on obesity, the percentage would be a lot lower than the standard American public,
Oh,
right? So
yeah. And Paul, one other thing too, and again, obviously I'm gonna say more with the women there, but obviously it's both the men and the women, but also too, and this is why I say the women, you have no idea. Most of them are mothers, or they're going to be mothers, and they are the mentors to those children. Every research study shows you that first 5 years of life for a child shapes a lot of who they become. And so they grew up in a household where physical activity is just part of daily exercise. They see mom getting up before they go to school. They see what dad does. You know what I mean? Or dad comes home after work and he's dead tired, but he still goes to the gym and stuff. And even though, again, they're still going to have, fast foods on the table and stuff, but that's not what their whole life of eating is going to be. They're already going to learn about nutrition and stuff, not even intentionally, just because it's what they see every day.
Absolutely. And remind me, Sandy, because I remember you said something about this at the women's seminar this past January, but kind of on that same topic about a lot of female competitors starting families, being moms. Didn't you say that what percentage did you say of female competitors are masters? I remember being very surprised how high of a number it was, but I loved hearing that.
Yeah. And that's one of the nice things now with the muscle wear, because now, as any organization, we have all this data now. And so when I called Andrew, I did it for somebody else who was going to do a talk on it somewhere else, and they asked me, and Andrew said to me, again, it's not the amount of athletes that compete as competitors, but these are the numbers that the athletes are masters. They're qualified to be a master. They're 35 or over. Okay, 66% of our pros are masters, but this is the part that surprised me: 43.8% of our amateur are 35 or over.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
yes, no, absolutely. And, so, when we first started doing masters, and I've said this, and I'm not trying to be derogatory, but I was like, I don't want to see 50-year-old women. And I was already older than that on stage. You know what I mean? And I am telling you, I've eaten every word that I ever said. I mean, because we see now, I'm sitting there at Masters Nationals, because, the women can compete in 40, 45, 50, 55. And, whoever wins the 55 overall, I'll go to Tyler, we'll get to the 50. And I'm like, the old lady's going to win the 52. Yeah, the old lady's going to win the 45 too. Because our masters athletes, especially our women, are just blow my mind every single year.
I've actually seen you cry at feedback.
Everybody's seen me cry.
Because you go, so, they'll tell you they have 3 kids and they have a PhD, and then, they just got into lifting 10 years ago and now they're 55-year-old bikini pros. So it's, I'm curious, because you've been around the sport when there was, when I first got into it, it was, there was a couple shows per year, and I live in Florida, which is probably one of the heavier states for shows. I mean, it really, I don't know if it was when they added the men's physique, the bikini, and then now you had like just this explosion of NPC competitions around the country. Did you feel that? I mean, obviously as a judge, you witnessed it, but was there like this surge at some point in the competition world?
And well, like everything else, Paul, too, like I said earlier about, women's bodybuilding, like, in the 90s and stuff, our next generation didn't really want to get as big, you know what I mean, and stuff. So our numbers really dropped off. And this is one of the things that I always say to everybody, anybody in this sport could have went away except for Jim Mannion. He really, coming from where he came, he grew up on the streets and stuff, but he loved the sport. He got into it just like the leaders did. You know what I mean? He loved the sport. He competed here. He listened to people. When the show started to drop off, the numbers started to drop off, and we saw some of the other, different organizations coming up with, like you said, fitness, you know what I mean? Other things that appeal to women, you know what I mean? He was like, well, let's try it. You know what I mean? Like, and if it doesn't work, then we'll get rid of it. You know what I mean? But he was always willing to try. But I think he basically he understood that whatever we added, it was still going to be bodybuilding. You're still building your body, doing what really was the premise of our organization. You were just allowing more people to want to be part of it because we gave them, like you said, different avenues that they could take their physique and do well in.
Yeah, so even my first competition, I didn't want to do bodybuilding because I was buying the magazines and I thought, well, I'm never going to be as big as Tony Freeman because he was the same height as me, or Jay Cutler, or so going to my first competition was very eye-opening because they had a division called novice, and it was just a bunch of guys that had never competed before. And I thought, there's where I know I can come in and not feel like I'm wasting my time. And it was a total blast. Deke Warner, who is to this day one of my favorite people, literally, this is, I'm going to date myself, but I had to mail my form in, and Deke called me about 3 days later and said, "Do you need any help?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Meet me at the gym. We'll talk about whatever you need help with, posing, when to get to the show, tanning." He was so helpful. And he really, to this day, I encourage people to do his shows. We're lucky in Florida. We have, Tim Gardner, and we've got Joe, and we've got South Florida. We've got just amazing promoters across the board. And I get to travel around the world now. But that first experience forever changed my opinion of the sport, because it used to be like a cloak and dagger, like weird, you behind the scenes sport. And I think it opened my eyes. And that was just about the time the internet was becoming a thing, and we were in chat rooms talking about it. So for me, that's the thing that always excited me about you. Was I was always scared to talk to you, but the moment I spoke to you, you were as open with me as if we had been friends for 30 years, and you told me everything. And so that's what makes this sport great, is people like you and Deke who encourage us to get involved.
Well, thank you, Papa. I mean, if anybody probably doesn't realize, but Jim Mannion's wife, Debbie, and I judged for 30 years, and she will always look at me and go, "Sandy, you can talk to the wall. You don't care whether it talks back to you or not." But no, because I do. I love this sport. Like I said, this sport saved my life. And I do want other women to realize, even if you only compete once or twice, or you never compete, the foundation though of the weight training and adding muscularity and learning nutrition and how to eat, that you can eat, like I said, I starved myself for years, and I eat more now at my age than I ever did before. And it's because, even though obviously I don't have a lot of muscle, even though I've tried now for 45 years, but you know what I mean? But I do have more than I ever would have had. And it's what increases your metabolism and allows you to be able to consume more food.
Well, honestly, you got to be strong. So I'm going to throw a memory out there. You have a very good memory. You have such a good memory. So the first time we met was in an elevator in Miami at Nationals in 2014. You walked onto the elevator with what must have been 5 binders of information. I don't know. You used to walk around with these giant binders. And Lauren Conlon got on the elevator. She was with me. We were friends at the time, and she was competing at the show. And she goes, "Sandy, I don't know if you remember me." She goes, "Honey, of course I remember you. I just judged you at USA's. I just judged you at Junior Nationals. What's your question?" And I just remember being in awe, like, she just judged 350 people and she remembers you. So are those personal relationships, is that something that you really enjoy about this sport? Because the feedback I always get from my competitors is like, Sandy just smiles and just makes me feel so welcome on stage.
It's funny because somebody asked me a long time ago and said the same thing. And they just said, "What are you thinking about?" And again, truth, this is my truth and this is how I feel. But like I said, I always say to everybody, I'm looking at you going, "Oh my God, I would trade bodies with any of you on that stage." And I mean that, because I didn't have, especially back then, I didn't have the structure for bodybuilding. You know what I mean? I had narrower shoulders. I have wider hip bones. You know what I mean? That's not what women's bodybuilding was, in the 80s and stuff. So once I started judging, it really did let me know, yeah, I don't belong on stage. Because my physique was never going to be that, a bodybuilding, women's bodybuilding,
Right.
physique. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other things that, other divisions I could look at, but, back then there wasn't. And, but yeah, and it amazes me, again, with those numbers, with the obesity and the overweight in our country, where every year we keep finding the amount of beautiful women, and I don't mean outward looks, because I mean, obviously they are, but I just mean physique wise, they beautiful
Yeah.
bodies with no cellulite and nice shape to them. And it doesn't matter whether you come from nothing. And I say this to girls all the time. I said, first of all, it's not a team sport, even though, don't get me wrong, the teams are the best thing that ever happened, but it's an individual sport. You're the only one going to that gym at 4 or 5 in the morning or 10, 11 at night. You are the only person you're competing with is yourself. If you start, because I'll have women that will, email me and say, I've done 15 shows and I'm never even close to the top 5 and stuff. And I go back and I pull up their photos from where their first show, and I'm like, but look at what your body looked like, and look where you are now. You should be wearing tighty shorts and heels and walking around all day looking like that. Look at how much you were able to change yourself. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's the part that I love about the sport.
Yeah, I do think we live in an era where coaches probably get a little bit too much credit for God's work, because I see, I get to work with, at this point, after a decade, some of the most incredible physiques in the sport. And I realize, like, listen, I can give them the mindset, the nutrition, the training, but at the Olympia, Ariana Brother's mom came up to me and she said, "Thank you so much for helping my daughter." And I just looked at her and said, "Thank you for like that, like whatever you did, like you made that." Like, like genetics is far more powerful than any coach, than any, training plan that you can put somebody on. So, there is an element of this sport that is so genetically dependent. And I think that's the struggle with judging. And what you still manage to do is look up at there and break down the physiques based on the standard of the division. So what I want to talk a little bit about is how has that evolved? Because I know, like you said, people like to push the boundaries. So what are the conversations like that you're allowed to share with us, like each year, on keeping, let's get into the bikini division, because let's be honest, that's what I do. That's what Lexie competes in. How do you guys work to keep that bikini standard bikini?
Well, you know what, Paul? First of all, I do have to go back to figure, because once we added figure with fitness, you have to remember, fitness was our second one. The muscularity, it was good. I mean, it had to be there, but not to the degree. When we got to figure, again, because every year we started to see the women, like you said, Paul, pushing the boundaries, because not even so much pushing the boundaries, but we had a lot more women coming from, post gymnast, track and field, with a lot more muscle already on their.
Yeah, Erin Stern comes to mind. She went straight to the top.
Yes, no, absolutely, because she had an athletic background. You know what I mean, and stuff. And so Jim started to, watch, and we saw, like, obviously we have the data we have now, but we could see that the numbers, that as many women weren't entering the shows, new, novice division, the newer things. And so he would, as soon as the Olympia was over, he would put out an email in January saying, "Okay, women, you've got to dial it back at least 20%. We are not, going to go, because again, it can't be the best body on stage. It has to be the best body for the criteria for the division." And that's what we do. And I will say, that's what I think you saw last year at the Olympia. I think, Tyler and everybody else saw over the last year or two that the muscularity, and even more so the conditioning, which is not a good, not as good, is not as healthy for women, for anybody, but for women. And so that's when he was like, no, we've got to dial it back. And he, he made it known to our coaches and our trainers and stuff that don't come in as conditioned. Don't, that's why Jen Dory, even though she was more conditioned the year before than Maureen, she didn't end up winning. She got second, because we, as a group of judges, were like, you know what? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful look, but do we want the women to have to go there?
Well, I think that's the standard with the Olympia, is that it's so critiqued because you're basically setting the tone for the entire sport.
Yeah.
And I won't say her name, but there was a champion a couple of years ago, and I feel like there was an immediate response where the next year everybody had a lot more muscle. They were posing with a lat flare, and it took about a year or more to get the standard kind of back in line.
No, absolutely. And that's why, and Tyler and I had that, discussion back then, because it's like, he said, I see more of the women doing their flaring and stuff. And I'm like, well, because that's what we picked. So that's where, and he goes, well, whoever was second or third that year, he goes, well, they don't do that. And I went, they were second. Nobody goes to the Olympia vying for second place.
Right.
These athletes are elite pros. They're what the standard we set. It's our responsibility as judges. And I've had this conversation, Paul, with trainers. Like, the trainers will say to me, well, and I said, you know what? This has nothing to do with you. This is us as judges. We're human too. And, you see a beautiful physique up there, and sometimes it's hard to go, oh God, it is. I love the physique. I love the look, but but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is
Oh
that
yeah.
real? Yeah. Is that what the criteria, it's what.
I'll test your memory. We were at a show last year. You were there. It was I want to say it was Girl Power. There was a girl, she must have come over from Asia. She was wearing Dream Tan, had a gold tan on her. She was
Oh.
completely shredded, but I mean, you could not take your eyes off her. And I think you guys ended up putting her in the top 10, where you could have just said you're last, because she was like striations in the glutes, but I mean, just stunning shape, but just didn't hold the criteria.
No. And that's where it's hard. This is where it's hard to try to get across or try to educate people, both, the lay people, but also to our new judges coming in. Because again, first of all, we're human. I got news. Once AI starts judging, that'll be a whole different ballgame. But right now, AI is not judging. It's actually human beings. And do we make mistakes? Hell yeah. Is it a big conspiracy thing? No. It's just we're human. Sometimes you get bowled over by a certain physique, even though, and also too, you have to remember, as a judge, I can go to a show because I'm only judging what's on stage. This is the hardest thing. It's happened at the USA about 5 or 6, well, maybe longer now, because I'm going to throw Julianne Mellon Carney in there. So yeah, a lot longer. But we got to women's physique, and all my judges, we brought out of the class, and they were like, oh, so that, whatever number she was, that's bodybuilding, right? And I looked at them, I said, is she bigger than Julianne Mellon Carney? And they went, oh, well, no. I said, then she's not too big. Everybody else in that class was just too small.
Sure.
So it's hard though sometimes when you go to a show and you do, because it does happen. I mean, our judging has gotten so much better, and I don't hear this near, but I used to hear, like, somebody would go to a show and they'd say they'd come to nationals. This happened like 10 years ago or so, but it was a men's physique, and he was like 7th or 8th at the Junior USA. And when I, gave him his feedback, I said to him, you need to grow a little bit, nice shape and stuff, a lot of potential. But then I looked, and he was 7th at a regional show. I already knew what happened. I emailed him, I said, because sometimes the data gets wrong in the computer too. Again, human beings are putting the data in. So I just said, hey, by the way, did you do X? Yeah, I was too big. They told me I was better for a national stage. That statement drives me up a wall.
Oh, I've had girls get that feedback. They didn't win the show, and they said, just go to nationals. You're too big for regional.
Okay. Paul, if you're in any kind of sport, that's your head. I shall always say to somebody, as a judge, if you say that, your head should explode. Okay. Because that's the most stupidest, asinine thing. If you're that good, you should be winning every regional show, right, which tells you to go to the national shows.
Right.
But sometimes we don't. And so I said, because, in our mind, you have to look at a regional show and go, is that person bigger than our standard? Whether it was Brandon Hendrickson or Jeremy Buendia or Jed Dory or whoever, whatever division is, Sid Gillen, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's hard, because when you're sitting at the table, you go, if it's close, you go, yeah, I think they are. No, I don't think they are. And, like I said, we do make, I look back sometimes, and say, oh, yeah, I should have went the other way. But it's, it's like I said, we're human, and we try. That's why we have 7 judges, so that, we do get the feedback from, from those other, our other panels, because, Paul, I say this all the time. I can tell you many times, even up to the Olympia, my winner is not who's getting that trophy on stage. Because again, we have, as the shows get bigger, we go from 5 judges to we go to 13 at the Olympia. So, they're knocking out 4 highs and 4 lows. So
yeah,
you could have
I was just going to ask if you could quickly just talk about the judging, because I think that would be helpful for the listeners, like how you guys dropped like the high and the low scores to make it fair. I think people would probably benefit from hearing that.
Yeah, we do. We always have an odd number, so that way it can't be a tie. And if it becomes a tie, you have a odd number. So you have 3 judges. I say you have a small show, it's 5 judges. You have 3 judges had to like the tie. You have 2 athletes that are tied. 3 judges had to like that one of those 3 of the girls better, and 2 judges like the other. It's just that depending if they, if they were 2nd or 5th or whatever, they had them. 3 judges still liked one of those 2 athletes better. So that breaks your tie. So there will never be a tie at an NPC show. It's called relative placing. We do it all the way up to the Olympic, that's how we break our ties. So, but with that, we always have odd numbers. We have 5 judges, some of the bigger regional shows will go with 7. When you get to nationals and the national shows, we have 9. And then usually at nationals, sometimes even in like when we do our nationals, we'll have 11, but we usually have 13 at the Olympia. We always do highs and lows till you get to 5. So when you have that 13 at the Olympia, you're doing 4 high scores, 4 low scores. You have to drop 8 out of the 13. That's why I say to people, you can have your 4 best friends and your family on the thing, and if they have you higher than everybody else, it's getting knocked out. And the same thing, I got athletes, I'll say, well, this judge doesn't like me, or this, I don't train at his gym, or whatever the, issue is. That's okay. They can have you 0. They're going to get dropped. You know what I mean? So it really ends up, because of that, it does end up to be the majority of the panel that, that calls the shots, not one judge, whether it's myself, Tyler, Steve, Gary, it doesn't matter. It's not, you know what I mean?
No, I think that's really helpful for people to hear, because I know that, every once in a while you hear the whole politics, debate, but I think that that's probably very helpful for our listeners and fellow competitors to hear.
No, and then just like when we get back to the judging, when we talk about, because people say, how do you decide who's going to be in that first call out? Mm-hmm. And I think you can see too that over the years, the amount of athletes in that first call out have grown a lot. You know what I mean? Where it used to be only like a couple, now it can be depending on the size of the class, it can be 8 and 10 people we're calling out, because every judge on that panel hands the head judge their top 5 or 6. And as a head judge, we just put Roman numerals next to those athletes, and the athletes that garner most of those judges that think they belong in that first call out. My thing as a head, or anybody as a head judges, did I think we missed somebody? Because we always say we would rather make the call out bigger and not miss somebody, because every judge on that panel knows what that first call out means, to an athlete, and we don't want to miss somebody, you know what I mean? And stuff, you can, like I said, you can leave people out there, get rid of some, but we do try to take that into consideration. And a couple of years ago, one of our last ones, our junior nationals in Chicago, it was 56 men in the men's physique class, and that was the first time Steve called out like 10 or 12 athletes. And Jim was sitting next to me, and he goes, why don't you just call out the whole class? And I'm like, but it was that the quality was that tight that with 56, athletes in one class, that top 10 or 12, they could have all vied for that first place.
Yeah, it is a calling card. The thing I love about the NPC and the IFBB is how many tiers there are in the sport. Whereas some of the smaller organizations, they have great shows, but they can literally go from an amateur to a world champion in 2 shows. Whereas the NPC, you're going from true novice to open to nationals, to first call outs at nationals, to getting a pro card, to now at a pro show, to first call out at a pro. There's so many tiers. That first call out at the Olympia really is just the elite of the elite in every division. And you guys always say it. Thank you guys for making this job so easy. It's just almost impossible to pick them apart. And I think that's why, when did you start staying after for feedback? And you roll your eyes, and I know why, because all the other judges that don't do it now get in trouble.
No, but the thing is, again, see, yous are all not like, when you talk about 2014, Paul, that's like the other day to me. Okay. So
same. Listen, same for me. I feel like it was yesterday so our first phone call, I don't know if you remember, but I had, Lauren Dannemiller won the overall at nationals. I was like, I don't know what to do with a girl that's supposed to be an Olympian. And you called me and we talked for 45 minutes, and I bluntly asked you, do I have to pay? Because there was this rumor, I was a new coach, that politics, you have to be paying all the girls that are at the top. They have this, and you're like, absolutely not, Paul. We do not care who their coach is. We don't care who their sponsors are. We care about the girls on the stage.
No, Paul, that like I said, that kind of stuff always, like, it drives me nuts and stuff. But when I roll my eyes with staying after, because, and again, what I'm saying these are obviously true stories. I swear to God, I'm not making these things up. But Jim's wife, Debbie, and I would judge together all the time. And I will, again, only bodybuilding, because that's all we had back then. But you have to remember, Jim was a competitor. He was a competitor, and he was he loved every male bodybuilder that got on that stage. He knew them all. They trained at Golds together, you know what I mean, and stuff. He loved the sport. So he would stay because, again, he was trying to build an organization. No one had any idea it was going to go to where it is. He would stay and talk to every vendor, every athlete that got on, male athlete that got on stage. And Debbie and I would be there, and I swear to God, this would be Debbie's thing. When he'd come out, she'd go, you got everybody. You talked to the janitor, you didn't miss any of the janitors, right? Because but that's what he did. That's why this organization is as big as it is. He made relationships with every person that came to a venue, okay? And I would travel to the world championships with him, and I just started talking to the women because he talked to the men. It was really, seriously, it was because of him that I did it, because I was just waiting around for him to get done talking. So then I started talking to the women, and seriously, that's how it started.
I mean, I don't think people realize, you said this is an individual sport, which it is. We make our own meals. We, no matter what our coaches or friends are telling us to do, we're going to the gym, we're setting our schedule. But there is such a power in a community. And I think when you talk to the people, you talk to the judges, and that first conversation I had with you, it immediately took down this barrier of what I had been convinced of people, like, you'll never have a girl turn pro unless they're on this team. You'll never have a girl go to the Olympia unless you do this. And you immediately took down that barrier for me, which made me want to keep going. Okay. This sport is not about preconceived notions. It's about the community of the people involved just want the best for everybody involved. And I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, because Jim and every judge on that panel knows that the more that we grow the sport, we're all going to make out. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there's, because I hear this all the time. I know there's coaches that say, no, I have an in with this judge, or I have an in with that judge. Okay. I will tell you again, I just said how we judge. He would have to have an in with at least 5 out of or 4 out of the 7 judge. You know what I'm saying? Like, I say to people, logically think about this. If it doesn't make sense, how can you think that that's what's happening? You know what I mean? And unfortunately, we are human, and we do make relationships. And I can go to dinner there's plenty of athletes that'll tell you, I can go to dinner with you or have a cup of coffee with you in the morning, and I can put you in 16 and under. Because I've done it with my friends. Because the reason, when you said about judging, like you didn't like judging, for me, when I started to judge, I'm competitive. Because I didn't know anybody. So I was like, and at that time they used to post the percentage, whatever the judges' percentages were. So being that I graduated first in my class, I always wanted to see 100 at the top. But it became competitive to me, no matter where they sent me at that time, early on. Could I fit in and do well with no matter who was on that panel with me? And it became a competitive thing, with me. And I'm still the same way and stuff. And but no, I just I can't, I'm not going to say names because then it will get people upset with me. But I just, again, because we don't know people. I love the teams. Don't get me wrong, especially for the women. Whether this is true or not, but I had a coach just a couple of years ago say to me that men will never go to a coach to be part of a team. They're going to a coach because that coach, in their mind, is going to get them to wherever they want to go. The pro card, the Olympia, whatever. Women are going to go to a team and stay on a team because if they like the community feel of that team. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things for us as an organization. The teams are the best thing that happened, because now you're not that lone island. Like, there was nobody in Reading, Pennsylvania, a female that competed that, when I was listening to men waiting for magazines to get information. Yeah. And now you have women belonging to a team that are from Maine and from Southern California, all on the same team. And with this is where I think social media is such a big, is a great thing, because you all can stay in contact, especially your mothers or your doctors or your attorneys, and you can talk and help each other get through those lows in the sport, or the plateaus in the sport, because they're up at 4 a.m, or they're, you watch the stuff that Whitney puts, she's doing her cardio while her little son's warming up with the football team because she's at his game. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's what makes women, you all come in to help and support each other. I do have to say this because this has changed since John Lindsay in the early 90s, when I first moved to California, he did, if you went to any California show, it was the pros, amateur I'm talking about, the pros always came. It was a scene to be seen, in the audience, you know what I mean? And stuff. And he started a show called Steel Rose. It was in Orange County, California, all women. Okay. It went 3 years. He lost money all 3 years because not only did women, amateurs not come to compete, the pros didn't show up. Even the own women didn't show up. Okay. And now what you see now, like Girl Power and the Nashville Fit Show, you see so many women now supporting their teammates. You know what I mean? And the sport
And the Phoenix shows the big one
yes.
too.
Yeah, that absolutely. Look at Whitney Jones. Just, I mean, again, it wasn't an all women's, but she still put like 600 and some athletes across stage. Whitney Weiser 2 years ago at Nashville Fit Show put 440 women across stage. You know what I mean? But I see the women, supporting the female promoters and going to the shows that do highlight the females. You know what I mean? And so
Yep.
it's so nice to see. And I think a lot of that has to do with the teams.
Well, let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about something that you're doing for the first time in the United States that I'm very excited about. You, just like when you got into judging and you said, I'm just going to do this, for a couple months, you are now a promoter, and you're doing something this year that, to my knowledge, I've not seen it before. Whereas you're having a pro show immediately following a national qualifier.
Yes.
Or a pro qualifier.
Yes, you're correct, Paul. At the Junior Nationals this year. But again, I also, I didn't travel during COVID, but obviously I did a lot of international travel before, and I'm back to doing it now again too. But a lot of the pro qualifiers in other, internationally, do a pro qualifier. They'll actually do all three. They'll do a regional qualifier one day on Friday, a pro qualifier on Saturday, and then do the pros on Sunday. So you could start out as you could go to that regional show to qualify for the pro qualifier, do the pro qualifier, win your pro card, and then compete the very next day. And some of that I think is because the cost of travel internationally, is so expensive, especially in Europe. And well, in Asia market, the same as here. It's not quite as expensive just if you compete in the United States. So I was thinking about that. And, the Junior Nationals is not a really big national show because we don't have masters, you know what I mean? And it's just, that's not the way that, everybody thinks junior is an age thing, and it's not. It started out Junior USA, Junior National. There was a progression on quality. Like the first national show you should go to is the Junior USA. The second one is the Junior National. Obviously that's all changed now as the different divisions came in and the amount of pro cards have increased and stuff. But so I thought, how can we build? We can't have masters and stuff. So I thought, why don't we see if we can do a pro show that way? Because again, Lexie, you can attest to this. For women, the sport, it's expensive for everybody, very expensive for the women. Because with the hair, the makeup, and the tan, it's crazy. So I thought because if somebody comes to me and they just win their pro card, now with, like you said, Paul, we have so many shows all over the country. I always tell a pro, you're already in shape. This body got you to that pro stage. You never know what's going to happen in life. Go, whatever pro show is close to now, go do it. See what you look like on the pro stage, without the height parameters or weight parameters, whatever it is at the time, that's going to make a big difference. Then you go back to the drawing board knowing exactly what you're going to look like. I don't care if you're dead last. You're still going to go back, because otherwise we do this. We go, oh, I need to be bigger, or I need to be tighter. And then you get to the first pro show and you're too tight because, because, you know what I mean? Because you, again, we're overachievers, obviously, or you didn't need to get extra, a little bit more extra development. This way you get, so I thought, well, what's better way than if we do it on the same weekend, like we do sometimes, like I said, internationally. Now the women, and initially, again, this is why I did learn from Jim, because you listen to the people around you, because I was thinking the women would compete Friday, and then the pros would compete, the pro women would compete with the men NPC on Saturday. You know what I mean? And Robin, actually, who does so much international, and Kim Odo said to me, why wouldn't you do it all on the same day? And I'm like, well, oh yeah, that's what we do internationally. So the way we're going to do it is that in the men are Friday, like we've always had it in the last 3 years. It's the Junior Nationals. The NPC men will do Friday. The women will do Saturday. We'll start with the regular pre-judging. Then when we come back for finals at 4 o'clock, the NPC, we're going to start with the Bikini division, so that the Bikini athletes, those 8 girls that win their pro cards there, if they want, nobody has to, but if they want, They can go backstage while we finish the rest of the finals for the junior nationals. They can join the IFBB and turn right around, and we're going to do a session for the pros, just like we do at all the Spectrum shows. There's a lot of promoters during COVID, they had to think outside the box, and they started doing those sessions because we couldn't have as many people in the audience or, in the venue. So we're going to do the same thing. The pros will come out immediately following the finals for the junior nationals, and everybody will do their individuals just like anything, but then they'll come back and come right back for their trophies. So for a lot of the pros, especially for local people, you only have to be there probably 4 o'clock on a Saturday. We'll be done by 9.
Yeah.
That's incredible to think. You could go from literally being an amateur on one day to Olympia qualified by the end of the day. I mean, that's really
well. If you look at last year, Allie, who won the overall,
yes.
she would have definitely given whoever came a run for their their money. And we all said that. So yes, and obviously, I've not, said anything, but if it works out, because I have partners, I have Robin Chang as my partner and Doug is my partner, and I'm hoping this works out, you know what I mean? And, if it does, I would like to do something like that for one of the men's divisions next year.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think, seeing Allie win that overall last year, had there been another show, I mean, you essentially just won a pro show because you're in the overall, everyone's a pro.
Yes.
So it would have been and I think Allie got second twice last year. She just missed going to the Olympia.
Yeah, she did. She did third. She went to Texas. Bernadette's going to get upset with me. The Republic. She went to the Republic, which was the very next week.
Yep.
Or 2 weeks, and then she got third there, and turned around and came to
Nashville
Gov Cup and got second.
And she got second at Nashville as well.
Yes, you're right. She got Nashville second too. Yes. So and so she would have been a very, she's somebody that could have went.
Oh, she's got the complete package. And I think that's when you get an overall champion at a national show out of, 200 women, there's going to be somebody that's got the outstanding genetics. They're peaked well. They've got the balance. And then now you're literally probably before you even have a chance to be nervous, you're on stage against, some Olympians.
Yes. And you don't have to. And like I said, this is what Robin and them brought up to me. They didn't, it's like, if you did Friday, they would have had to come back and do hair and makeup again. This way, just like you said, first of all, the anxiety, now that you don't even have time to worry about that. And you don't have to do hair and makeup again. You can literally do it all in one day. So, I mean, I really do. I'm hoping the women, they do like it. And I'm hoping that we get a really good turnout for the pro women. I do want to say really quick, because, obviously Clash Series is our title sponsor. So it's going to be, they're going to get the tier, they're going to get the Clash belt, they're going to get the Tiffany ring. But I also have bracelets that are going to be donated by Bulletproof for the overalls. We have, we have Wolfpack bags. Better Bodies overall bags for all the things. So as a pro, you are gonna go home with a lot of, a lot of gifts that our sponsors are wanted to be part of this for the first time, and I can't thank our sponsors enough.
Yeah, Joe's very excited. I spoke to him yesterday. As you know, you'll be at Clash in a couple days for the first non-Arnold pro show of the year.
Yeah, you're absolutely. You know what, Paul, too, while we're talking, I do want to bring this up too, because, I'm judging the Triple O dynasty, and I really do. I keep saying, I'm hoping the women will support this, because these 3 girls, Whitney and Andrea and Sid are really putting a lot on the line with the sanctions and there's a huge financial endeavor when you go into, promoting a show and stuff. To do the divisions from a pro standpoint that, we're not at Arnold's and stuff. And, so I'm really hoping that the women come out. Like I said, even if you're not competing.
Well, I'm not familiar with this. Can you explain what you're talking about?
Triple O. Arnold's did not have, for the Arnold's shows, they dropped figure, women's physique, and they had dropped bodybuilding a while ago. So when Sid realized that last year there was no figure at the Arnold, she called me. She said her, Andrea, and at the time, it was just her and Andrea at the time, they wanted to do a show where they had those 3 pro divisions, and we couldn't get it done for last year. So they're doing it this year, April 6th. in Phoenix, and Whitney joined because we couldn't find an area. Because again, gyms, they're not just going to put on shows for the sake of putting on shows. It also
Sure.
has to be, well, they have to, look at like what the area can hold. You don't want to hurt other promoters that have been there type thing. You know what I mean? So Arizona turned out to be the better area. And then with Whitney there and stuff, the three of them got together, and they're doing pro women's bodybuilding. Obviously, Rising Phoenix I'm assuming is a big sponsor there. They're doing women's physique. I know Natalia Kohol is involved in it, and then figure, obviously, with Sid Gillen. And then, but it's also an NPC show. It's it's NPC men.
Oh,
NPC,
awesome.
yes, it's the whole show. But I'm just hoping that, especially the women's pros, that they go out and support them. Like I said, even if they're not competing, but to give those three women the support because they were
Yeah,
willing
absolutely.
to,
I went to Sid's show in Atlanta last year and it was fantastic. So yeah,
she's a great
yeah.
she's a great promoter.
Oh, well,
Great
she's
person.
just a great human being. Yeah.
I know. Yes,
Yeah,
she is. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. We've been on the line here for an hour, but I just want to finish with your thoughts on, so far we've had two pretty major shows. You had judged them both, and just your thoughts on the bikini standard that girls are bringing this year to the top pro level: conditioning, balance, muscularity. Maybe talk a little bit about the top three placings at each show and what kind of separated maybe Laura Lee from Amy, Tara from Vanya, and just, I think we would all kind of like to be a fly on the wall at the judges table when these decisions are made, because these are amazing athletes that you could on any day say that they're the best. So I think we heard a little bit of.
No, I was just going to say, sure, obviously with Arnold's, one of the things that Tyler really stresses is that hourglass shape, because you do want it to be a little bit different from figure, a little bit, you know what I mean, and stuff. And obviously the amount of muscle and the conditioning is what separates all four divisions and stuff. But I think Lorelai, she has, Jen Doy's another one. They have Maureen, they have that hourglass shape, you know what I mean, and stuff. But again, it depends whether you bring that hourglass shape in the right condition and stuff. Obviously Lorelai didn't because again, Paul, and Lexie, how hard it is to hit your peak at that time on that day consistently, you know what I mean, and stuff. And obviously Lorelai didn't, at the thing. So even though you have an hourglass shape, doesn't mean you're going to be at the top if the rest of it doesn't, fall in. And I think obviously at the Arnold's, the judges, it was only at one point. I think it was a 1 point decision at Arnold. I mean, at Arnold's too. I think, I was going to say, because Amy's another one. She's got a beautiful physique and stuff. And I think here, though, even though they were both of them, I thought were in great. Their condition was great. Neither of them were too hard. No splits. No, because again, a lot of times too, it's when we saw it here in Arnold's at UK and stuff. I'll talk about that. Is when because the girls start walking, we really, especially in bikini, we don't want to see those splits in the quads and stuff. So Paul, you've got it, you do know how hard it is to get the girls lean enough to have nice roundness to the glutes, but not too lean. That's where people that remember Jen Ronzetti, that's why she lost at Olympia that year, because her whole package was great, but when she walked, she was just a little bit too lean because you could see the splits in the quads, and we really don't want to see that in bikini, especially if there's somebody else that is it just could and doesn't have it, and that's and that's what. So I think Lorelai, because she does have a really nice hourglass shape and brought her conditioning in, obviously better than at the Olympia, but again, not stride, no separation, no splits in the hamstrings. And I think part of that is because she's got so much depth in her glutes, it pushes those glutes out and gives them that nice round fullness. Okay.
Yep.
And now you just
said Vanya and Tara, that was a 1 point decision as well, right?
Yep. Because this is why, if anybody can fly in the wall and they've heard us talking at the judges, it's like, what? Because we do want we all know how important, especially myself, how important it is to every athlete what they give to get on our stage, first of all. And that is, I will tell you, every judge on that panel knows what our athletes sacrifice to be on that stage, and you want the right person. Like I said, we've all looked back when it went, maybe we, so you struggle because you have the best of the best in front of you, and Tara and Vanya. But I think the same thing that for me, okay, at Arnold's was the same thing at UK, was that Vanya had more that hourglass shape. I thought Tara, and I think Tara might have, I think personally, hurt herself a little bit with the posing because she really opened up her lats and stuff. And I think it just made, to me, it made her look a little bit imbalanced. And I think some of that could have been just, you know, with a little different posing might have changed, you know, might have changed it. And I thought Vanya's glutes were just a little bit fuller than Tara's. I thought she had a little bit more like a, you know, Lorelei. She had a little bit more roundness back, you know, back there, where Vanya was a little bit tighter at the Arnold's. And that's what kind of hurt her a little bit, because we could see a little bit of, you know, separation in her shoulder. She softened up enough for Arnold's, but also too kept her glutes at least tight enough, which obviously, you know, I can't even imagine how you know, like that fine tuning for that, especially when you're flying, you know, from, you know, US to, you know, to London or to England, and, you know, and your body adjusting to that difference in time frame.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate your insights on the judging, because it's something that all the athletes, all the coaches, and honestly, this is why I put my NPC competitors. That's why Lexie and I, you know, we're both coaches, and we are going to put our athletes in front of judges that can articulate, you know, and give us the standard for the division. And so that's, you know, it's always exciting for us with Florida, because we've got amazing judges in Florida. I've really been excited, you know, between, you know, Tim Gardner and, you know, even now David. I'm sure you've gotten to know David recently.
Oh yeah, I've judged with David plenty of times now. He's another great, and that's the thing is, I love this sport because we do, and it also, you know, people always say to me, and that's why the women's workshop started, because people say, Sandy, if you retire, who's going to take your place? And I'm like, we have amazing young people coming up. It's just lots of times they're only noted in their localized area. They, you know,
like a Bernadette. Bernadette's doing great.
Oh, and Mo and
Mo and Becky.
Becky. Oh, that's what I'm saying. We have so many amazing.
Well, the Nashville Fit Show has a women's only panel.
Yes, I know.
Does Girl Power doing that this year?
Yes,
I don't know.
Girl Power does the same thing. Yeah, and so does Rising Phoenix for the for the women's, you know, that has the bot, you know, it's just the Rising Phoenix. I always want to put another name to it, but no, they're the same way. It's an all women's panel, and you know, just like men, I always say this to somebody, they say, oh, they're not going to care. No, they do. And you know, men are going to again, you don't have an all male panel, but they would like to, it's always, I think they like having that male head judge. Just like I think women the same way. It just gives, I think it gives athletes that just a comfortability, you know, ability.
I could see that. I have a question for you, Sandy. Before we wrap this up, what, in your opinion, and I guess we'll talk, I mean, this could be all athletes across the board, but specifically for bikini, what is the one thing, in your personal opinion, takes an athlete from being just kind of good to great? Like, what is it that you see in an athlete on stage that takes them from good to great?
Confidence that they have in themselves when they know they hit it. I brought this back a couple times again. I don't know if you remember, but Jessie Palmer, when she competed, she never had the best body, even for bikini on stage, but she was always in that top 5 because her posing and her confidence, just her whole overall look and the way she carried herself, just as a judge, drew you to that physique. You know what I mean? And I think, to be honest with you, I think Ariana has that too. It's the same thing. She just has a great look and a confidence in herself that when they walk out on stage, the judges are just, their eyes are drawn to that, you know, to that physique. And that's why I always say that confidence, that no matter male or female, that the athlete has in himself, you know, and again, I've had athletes that actually look better than I've seen them, you know, like the previous show, and they don't do as well because in their core, they don't feel like they are where they want it to be. And you can see it. You can see it in the way they pose and, you know, in the way they carry themselves. But that confidence, especially in women, really, really can say, you know, it really says a lot to me about the athlete.
That's awesome.
That's what stood out to me about Lauralee at the Arnold. You know, the first athlete that I ever had that wow factor that made me stop what I was doing and go, well, I didn't teach them that. That was Daraja. You know, she kind of commands your attention. Lauralee at the Arnold, when she walked out, I was like, oh, This is her day. She knows it's her day. Like
Yeah.
It
she
was
just
funny.
had
I
that.
feel like she walked out, and I almost feel like I remember you and I, Paul, were next to each other. I feel like the whole room almost just kind of got
Yeah.
quiet. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
she's here.
Yeah.
Everybody just commands that attention.
Yeah, no, and it was funny because again, going into the junior nationals last year, I had heard I don't even remember who told me, but that this girl had won the DC amateur, the overall.
Tyler was the head judge there. I was
Yeah,
at that one
yeah,
too.
but I can't remember who told me though, and I was like, oh, never told me who it was. I just knew some, and it was funny because when Allie walked out on stage, now again, we had 200, women competing in bikini, and I looked at Tyler and I just said, is that the girl that won the DC show? And he goes, yeah, she walked out. She looked like a pro.
Yeah.
She carried herself like a pro, that confidence. She knew she looked good, you know what I mean? And stuff. And it does. Like I said, I mean, obviously your body has to be there too. But I think as an athlete, when you know you hit it and you know what I mean, and you walk out with that confidence, that to me it just says a lot.
Yep. Totally agree. It's honestly why I tell people to attend a show before they compete, because when you're
Yes.
watching, you can't explain it, but you can see it. You can just
Yeah.
see them walk across the stage and you're like, oh, there's something different about this person.
Yep.
Versus the girls that practice the routine over and over, but all they're doing when they go on stage is they're just practicing. They're not
Yeah.
performing.
Yeah, you know what, Paul? You're absolutely right. And especially now when you get to like our Olympia and you have 50 some women. And I say this all the time, I'm looking down and all these women on that stage, I tell everybody, you have to remember they all won at least one show or multiple shows. And there's 30 some of them or 40 some of them going to be in the 16 and under category. And you know what I mean? And you kind of like, I'll see a name and I'll go, oh my God, how we missed her. And then I go, who would I trade her with? No, I don't know. I don't know who to change her with, because I'm serious. The quality is just become crazy in bikini.
Well, I don't want to keep you any longer. I want to respect your time. I hear your birds are getting hungry. So
Sorry about that.
it's time to go feed them. But
We're a big animal. Yeah, we're a big animal thing. I just had my life just got great yesterday because we had a duck that I didn't know anything about, but mom was sitting on eggs for almost 7 weeks, 7 weeks. But a duck will sit on their eggs, even if they're not going to hatch sometimes until the mom dies, because the mom won't get off. And now I have 5 baby ducks yesterday.
Aww.
chirping around the pond.
Yeah, they're all like, oh my God. And mom sits on all, I went back in the little house and I saw she moved and then I could see these little heads sticking out. And I'm like, oh my God. And so now they're all in our little pond. But then when they go back in the house, she sits on all 5 of them.
Well, listen, I know you don't love to do your Instagram very often, but that's the kind of videos you can post to your stories and we will all love them.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I do. I'm a big animal. I'm a big animal lover. So, but no, thank you so much. And like I said, I love the sport and I love Paul. Seriously, we're so fortunate for the trainers and, all the athletes that even when they're not competing, that they stay, we have so many women now that have been test judging and become, that's why we can have all women, female panels and stuff, because we have a lot of women that you still want to stay involved. It keeps you young. It keeps you healthy. It keeps you around people that have the same, philosophy, likes and stuff. And, it does. So it's
even if you're not competing, it's a great reminder of what the sport is about, because sometimes we're just stuck in our gym and, in our little,
So, and like I said, and we meet so many, like I said, we have surgeons and attorneys and, anesthesiologists, and it just blows my mind that they get on our stage.
I've never been to a show or a seminar that I've ever regretted going to. I always walk away with just a new, like just going, not as a competitor, not as a coach, just attending. I just always walk away with a new sense of excitement towards things. It's just, it's great to put yourself out there and to go to those types of experiences.
Well, I was really surprised real quick when I went to the UK. I had somebody come up to me from Spain and said, would I help with them do a European women's workshop? And because this year at our workshop, I was very fortunate. I had a girl from Japan that came, one of the judges. I had 2 from Canada, 2 from Mexico, and a girl from London, England. I thought she meant London, Connecticut, and she was no, London, England. So I'm actually going over to Tokyo in August, and part of their weekend is going to be a women's workshop. And then I am assuming we're going to and I know Ron Hachey is, I told him I'd be more than happy to help him with something in Canada. So, I think we're going to see more of that, around the world, which is.
You don't happen to be judging the show in Maidenhead April 6th. Oh, no, you're going to be at Sid's show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm going to go over for that show, and I was trying to gather like me and Phoebe and a couple of my athletes and do like a little Sunday just Q&A posing event.
Oh yeah, because you know what, Paul, the thing is, I always think like even now with I've been talking about the junior nationals, but when I went to the UK and we had a lot of, not a lot because there's only like 13, but out of the 13 women, most of them were USA athletes, and they knew nothing about the pro show in, with the junior nationals. And I'm like, so when you think all this information is out there, there's still a lot of, of athletes and spectators, whatever, that really don't have the correct information. You know what I mean?
Right.
They just hear stuff, through social media.
Well, I'll be honest. The last I looked, it was Friday pro card, Saturday pro show. I didn't realize you had changed that. So I need to update it. And honestly, like, I'm a sponsor. I don't know if you've sent me my invoice for the year, but anything we can do to get the information out, because obviously we have a lot of eyes and ears.
Well, thank you, Paul. But no, I will tell you, I suck at the sponsorship. I tell Robin all the time. I hate because I do know how much money this sports costs, and I do know even from a coaching, from somebody that has a team and stuff, it is, and especially the year always starts out. So no, you and I can talk about that, obviously, Paul. But
and if you want me to hand out awards, just remember, not Class A. Those are my favorite pictures. I know. I got to think about this. Okay, now let me make sure put the trainer in the right division, because again, you don't want to find out what you don't have enough to think about.
Yeah. No, but yes, now we're looking at heists and stuff too. But no, thank you both so much. Like I said, it's all of the teams that do so much for the sport and so much for the women, because that gives them that community feel.
You're right. There's definitely power in numbers. The women are a very strong community, and so creating a team was never our goal. Lexie found me at an expo. We hit it off, and she came after she got her degree from Tampa and came to work for me part-time, and now she's one of our busiest coaches. So it's literally, these events are what drives progress for all of us. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, it just teaches women the power of weightlifting, and like I said, the nutrition that the sport does, our sport does, teach. So no, absolutely.
Well, we're going to get to see you in just a couple days. So
yes,
I'm excited about that.
I know. I'm going to do a seminar this weekend in Northern Cal for my husband, and then I'll be out to Orlando for the.
What city in Northern California? Let's get some people there.
Oh, we're going to be in
Sacramento.
Nope, it's going to be Fresno. Fresno's a big body. Yeah, it's funny. Fresno's like, I think an hour or 2 hours south of Sacramento, but it draws a lot. There's a big body. That's where Aaron Banks is from. It's a big bodybuilding. Yes, there's a big bodybuilding community in Fresno. The shows always do very well in Fresno. But then I'll let you know, Paul, because John has 4 seminars.
Well, if you're interested, I know Lana Dunbar is in prep. Her husband, who you judged, is in prep. He won the overall at that show 2 years ago. So I know they might be interested in coming down.
Oh, good. I'll talk to them. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, we're like I said, we're so fortunate, and and we're also, I'm really working on trying to grow the NPC portion of Vegas, because we have so many pros in Vegas.
Yeah.
And we're really working on trying to grow, the NPC portion. So we have a seminar coming up at Torture Gym on May 5th.
It's a great name for a gym.
I know.
I love
really
that.
encourage people to come in.
Torture Gym, yes.
Yeah. But no, thank you both so much.
Thank
you,
you,
Sandy. All right.